What is up, guys, and welcome to this special episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Maria Britos and Ralph Hanna. And as you can tell, we are all in the Avi Roja today because we will be talking about these three important World Cup qualifiers that are happening in about a couple days. Paraguay will take on Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela for the September match dates of the World Cup qualifiers for Qatar 2022. Big games ahead. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about. A lot of controversy has been going on. Always an exciting time to talk about Paraguay, no matter if it's a World Cup qualifier, a friendly, or even a Copa America. We are here at Guarani Vision to talk about it. So let's go straight into it. Let's go to Maria first. Be ladies first. Got to be appropriate and as a gentleman. But how are you feeling? You know, now literally at the time of the recording, about 48 hours until the first game against Ecuador.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm feeling super excited. Another World Cup qualifiers, and it's always fun to watch the Roja play. You know, it's like I always talk about, it's the time when everyone comes together and, you know, you cheer for the same team, for one team. You know, it's your heart. It's a lot of fun for me to go through this qualifiers again. And see where Roja can end up. You know, there are three very difficult, opponents, and we had some history with them, not so good history, which is concerning a little bit. But you know, let's hope for the best. But other than that, I'm just happy that it's this week.
But sometimes you get a bit stressed, don't you think? I think we all felt that, not just in the Copa America that happened, but also in the qualifiers. So it's kind of that feeling of, oh, it's them again. But at the same time, when that national anthem hits, it's always that feeling, all right, here we go. Let's see what they can do. So yeah, I agree, Maria. I'm super excited and super anxious. And then Ralph, I'm sure you're feeling the same way as well. And it's probably time to change history, you would say, for these games, because as you know, these opponents are familiar opponents. And if you look at some of the history, it's not worked well for Paraguay. So I think it's time to change a bit of that this time around.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. It's like getting that kind of feeling of excitement. People are starting to throw around a few teams for that first game, you know, some possible 11s. So the excitement is building up. I'm definitely feeling quite positive about this triple header compared to the last double header, because if people remember, that was a trip to Uruguay and then Brazil at home. So I think, you know, we weren't expecting very much from there. And also what I have in my mind is that last Copa America game against Peru, which, although Paraguay were knocked out on penalties, you know, there was the very harsh red card on Gomez. There was, you know, the kind of fight that Paraguay showed throughout that game, you know, pulling back each time to get level, including that very last minute goal. So, you know, even though they got knocked out in that game, I think it didn't really leave such a sour taste as an elimination usually would. So, you know, there's a bit of optimism, I think. And then, as you mentioned, Roberto, maybe in recent history, Paraguay haven't done as well in these games. But it's three teams that you would feel they can take points off all of them, assuming they play to their strengths and play to their best.
And certainly for someone like Eduardo Berizzo, who has obviously been through a lot of criticism over the last 2 years, these are the type of games where, you know, he needs to at least get some results to get people on his back and to get that support, especially as we end September. Halfway through the qualifiers, actually. It's hard to believe. We'll be 9 games in out of an 18-game qualifier. So I'm super excited for this one, but let's go into what we'll see first. Obviously, Paraguay will travel to Quito in about 2 days at the time of recording. As I had mentioned beforehand, and as probably you have seen in our preview episode that we did with Martin, a fantastic interview. If you haven't listened to it yet, it's on YouTube and it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Paraguay go into this one right now, as we speak, currently in 6th place, just 1 point shy off of Colombia, who obviously will be playing after this game for the final playoff spots, whereas Ecuador are currently in 3rd place with 3 wins and 3 losses with 9 points, just a few points behind Argentina, and obviously Brazil leading the way, who have had a perfect record so far. So, Ralph, I'll go to you on this one first. As the historical buff that you are, Paraguay go into this game having never won in Quito, never won a single game over there in altitude. The huge factor, obviously, that will go into Ecuador in this game. But honestly, if you look at it real quick, and you mentioned the Copa America, you do see a bit of a fight from this Paraguay side. You can see that they will make it difficult for them, as Martin had mentioned in our interview, that Paraguay have always been a tough opponent for them, no matter where they play, be it in Ecuador or in Asuncion. I think this is a crucial game where, in a way, you don't expect much out of them, but I think there is a sort of optimism in a way. And obviously, we talk about a Paraguay squad won't be without Gustavo Gomez due to suspension, won't be without Miguel Almiron because of Newcastle United not sending him off to South America due to the Premier League restrictions. So I just wanted your thoughts, and obviously, Maria, you can jump in afterwards, of how you assess this game for Paraguay against this opponent in Ecuador.
I think it's a very important game because of the positions you just mentioned. So Ecuador are 1 point ahead of Paraguay going into this. And what you wouldn't want is maybe to lose and then suddenly a potential direct rival brings up that big gap. But then you also said historically Paraguay have never won in Quito, and I don't think, this is not one of the best Paraguay generations, and it's actually a better Ecuador generation than we saw maybe in early qualifiers when, the round robins started. So you wouldn't think that this is the moment for Paraguay to do history. So what we're kind of coming down to is Paraguay need to get a point. And what Paraguay have done really well in these qualifiers is in those away games, dig in when they have to and find the results. They drew 0-0 in Montevideo against Uruguay. They drew 1-1 against Argentina in the away game. They won against Venezuela. I mean, they almost could have slipped up in that game. But what we're seeing is a pattern of in the away games, they've kind of done the business and at least not got beaten in some of these tough matches, when they really kind of dig in and play without the ball, which I think we might see here, because this Ecuador team is as Martin mentions in the other podcast, it's an exciting team. They're playing good football. They like to have possession. So I think in a way that could actually suit Paraguay to go out and get what I think would be a great result is a point here, a draw in this one.
I agree with you there, Ralph. I think it's one of those tough games because not only Ecuador is, like you said, a better team this time around, but they're always been a team with big players. And, Paraguayans are known for not being such big players. And that's one of the disadvantages that we are going to be facing. And I think not the only thing that they can focus on, but one of the results that they should focus on is getting at least a draw. That way they don't lose, because at this point they can't lose any more games. They need to get over in the table, get over the 5th place so that they can secure the spot to the World Cup to the World Cup in Qatar. So to me, I think this is one of those games, especially because it's away and the conditions that they'll be playing in, which is, the altitude, and it's not really which is really another disadvantage. But, it's one of those games that you can probably just get 1 point and then focus on the other next 2 games and getting 6 more points.
Well, looking into the squad as a whole, obviously, as you see, you did talk about not having that big striker, and you mentioned Carlos Gonzalez will not also be on this squad, a player that actually did well in the last Copa America. So that's going to be the main factor, is who is going to go get that goals. The one key factor that Berizzo puts in, and Ralph, I think you had mentioned it real quick when it had happened, is the inclusion of Luis Amarilla. Luis Amarilla obviously getting his first ever called up, playing his club game currently in Quito, will actually be playing in the stadium that he plays his club game at, the Rodrigo Paz Delgado, the Casablanca, as they say over there in Quito. So maybe Berizzo has a plan in mind for him, or do you feel that maybe he's going to try to utilize the same players that he's been so accustomed to? Because I think that was the main factor of Berizzo trying to use this Copa America, is to try to find his base of players. And you can see from the players that we have at his disposal is it's basically the same squad with some inclusions of players who have done well locally or maybe abroad. And I think that's a key factor for these type of games. not just obviously against Ecuador, but obviously for the next two against Venezuela and Colombia.
Yeah, I think what we saw in the Copa America is that was the first time, of course, Berizzo had the players for such a long time with so many games to actually, try and pick and choose or make immediate adjustments. But what we saw that while he did change sometimes Avalos for Gonzalez, he did want to play with that kind of physical number 9. And you get the feeling that he probably would have gone with Gonzalez had he been fit in this one, or even Avalos. Avalos also wasn't picked because he's not fit. But you get the feeling that he doesn't want to go back to that style of trying to use someone like Angel Romero in there, or even Sanabria. I think, I get the feeling he wants somebody that's more of a target man, and in this case, that's what he picked Luis Amarilla for. So I think he's probably going to go with Amarilla in this game, being the away match as well, and try him out. And then it's his spot to lose, I guess. Going into the Colombia Venezuela matches, but I think that's what we'll expect to see. And then his other big question mark now is going to be in central defense, because Paraguay have a lot of good central defenders, but with Gomez suspended for this game because of that red card against Peru in the Copa America, yeah, he has. I mean, Balbuena was kind of left out, we saw, but Balbuena wasn't playing much club football at the time. Now he's moved from West Ham to Dynamo Moscow. He's being a regular starter, so he's got minutes under his belt. So that might give, Balbuena the kind of nod. But then you have someone like Alderete, who's also made a move this year from the Bundesliga to La Liga, and he's playing with Valencia, and I think he's played every minute as well. Valencia are top of the league, maybe, or they've had a great start to the season. So, there's a couple of players there who, and then if you think if he picks Alderete, does that mean he doesn't pick Junior Alonso, who's a player he has liked to pick before, because both Alderete and Alonso are left-footed. So I think one of the immediate things is going to be that central defense and what partnership he goes with. I think he'll go with Amarilla on the 9. And then the other thing, I guess, who replaces Almiron? And that's a difficult shout, I think, because somebody like Kaku might be the more natural player to fit in there. But maybe he wants to use, I don't know, an Oscar Romero in there instead, who's also left-footed, because he did often end up sending Almiron towards the left-hand side.
What about someone like Enciso, for example? Maybe he can be a spark plug that, kind of that. And then we obviously saw that in the games, not just for Libertad in the local games, but also in the Sudamericana. He could be someone that's important and certainly kind of that main factor. You also got Melgarejo on the side as well. So there's a lot of players, and Maria, I think as well, and I recall a conversation that we had, all of us, is now that without Gomez, who is going to step up as the leader? Frau brings up a good point about Balbuena, probably a player that obviously I think definitely needs more opportunities in the squad. You don't see that much of Almiron, and now he's not going to get in. So this is the main concern about it as well. Who is going to step up as the leader? It was Gomez. You do see that kind of harsh side of him. Obviously, we saw that in the game against Peru where he got sent off. But what do you feel is that, or who do you think could be that player that could indeed step up, especially when things get tough, maybe in this game as well?
That's a really good question, Roberto. And the one player that actually comes to mind is the Romeros. Angel Romero in this case to me, because I feel like he's, besides Almiron and probably before Gomez, I think he's one of the biggest faces of the Albirroja. And, just the manner in which he plays and he gives it all to this team. You see, the passion that he has when he scores and when he makes plays, and you see his passion in the field. And I think he could be one of those players that could be a leader for this team. He's a leader, or was a leader in his former team. I'm not sure where they're going to go now in their club. But you can see that he is one of those players that he's probably a good player in the locker as well, leading the players, putting the garras out there for the team. So in my opinion, I think he's one of those players the one that pops up in my head right now.
Yeah. What about you, Ralph? Do you feel that maybe Angel is the one that can be that kind of leader?
Yeah, I think it's a good shout because also he's been one of the top performers on the pitch. So I think, you know, his starting spot's guaranteed pretty much, and then you also have the factor that Berizzo can probably rely on him. The other person that comes to mind that, you know, somebody who's grown and grown this year is Matias Villasanti. I mean, Matias Villasanti was captain at Cerro Porteño. He's now got his big move to Gremio. He's starting regularly there, and he's a player that you kind of like for that leadership because his job is pretty much a destructor. I mean, that's usually what he's in there for, to win the ball back, to disrupt teams. So there's something that could go there. I mean, one thing that maybe goes against Villasanti is he's quite young relatively to the team. He was captain of Cerro, but he was, you know, captain from a very young age. And then the safe option is to look at the junior Alonso Balbuena, that whoever he chooses at centre back. But yeah, I think Romero could be a good shout. Villasanti's maybe more of a wild card, but it just came to mind.
Yeah, yeah, and it's gonna be difficult. And you also look at Silva as well, the goalkeeper obviously has the experience. He's also out there as well. So even if you don't have the likes of Gomez or Almiron as those key players, you still have. I think this is a perfect opportunity for a lot of these players to come out, especially in this game. Obviously, Gomez will be back for the game against Colombia, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I think if they're going to get a result here, you're going to have to see a lot of these players step up, and it would have to come from even the ones that we don't expect from. Like if you mentioned Ralph, if it's from Villasanti, it could be him. If it's from someone like, I don't know, Richard Sanchez, maybe. Obviously, you got Sanabria there, Samu. You got a lot of those players. Alonso. I mean, it has to be up to them, and I think that will be key in order for them to get a result over there in Quito, which obviously leads into our next game that will happen in Asuncion as we speak at the moment. It will be in front of fans. This will be actually the first game that Berizzo will have in front of fans, a competitive game. He had fans in a friendly before the Copa America 2 years ago, but this will actually be the first time that Berizzo comes in to this game with fans in a competitive matchup. Maria, I want to go to you on this one because we spoke with Ron about this and obviously listened to the episode with Ron that will come out in a few days talking about Colombia. But as we speak, Colombia will be without some key players for this one. They won't be without James Rodriguez. No Duan Zapata, who is doing well, who is obviously a key player in Atalanta. But no Yerry Mina from Everton as well. But you still have key players like Quintero, Wilmar Barrios, Juan Cuadrado, Luis Diaz, who had a fantastic Copa America, Radamel Falcao as well, who returns. So it is a stacked team, and Colombia have gotten our number for quite some time. They've always won at Paraguay, I think, since 2001. So 20 years of always winning there in Asuncion. So especially heading into this game, assuming whatever happens against Ecuador, I think Berizzo will need to view this one as the must win for this one because you're at home. You need to change history on all levels. But how do you assess this game for Paraguay against Los Cafeteros?
Well, I think it's definitely, one of those games that it's not an easy one. Like you said, we had some history with Colombia, especially at home, not doing so well, but it's doable. I think Colombia is a great team. We've seen them go to the World Cup as well, and they've done really well as well. And but I think that we have been able to decipher their place. We've been able to really figure them out, and I think that's one of the keys that they can do, that Albiroja can do against Colombia. Figure out how to get the how do I say this? I lost the word in my mind, but kind of like figure them out. And like I said, it's just one of those teams that we've had some bad games against, but we've also had some good games. So I think it's a doable win, especially at home, in front of fans, which I think would definitely help a lot with this game. It's been such a long time that we haven't had fans there. Although it's going to be a small amount, it's still something. You need those cheering. That definitely helps a lot.
Well, you say the cheerings, although there's always the worry that if Paraguay have done badly against Ecuador and they go into the game, there could be even a negative attitude around this. This is the big unknown, because you mentioned, Roberto, that there were fans for Berizzo's game before the Copa America, but that was, very early into his time. He still had plenty of credit with the fans. Now, there's definitely a lot of people that are worried about the team. So you don't know. It depends who of these 6,000, I suppose, get in, if they're like Team Berizzo, anti Berizzo. I think there's going to be a whole process. I think everybody has to be vaccinated to be able to go into the stadium. I would assume that's what they're working on with the local league. But that would be great to see that again, even though it's a small number of fans. What I think we've seen, I've been watching other like leagues where they've done this pilot of having people come in. Even that small group of fans, like the noise is incredible, because you've been used to almost nothing. In terms of the game itself, I was just quickly scanning. The last time we played Colombia was in the Copa America in 2019. We lost 1-0. That game, Paraguay looked very bad. But the team's very different now. I mean, that on that day you had people like Ivan Pires, Delis Gonzalez, Mati Rojas, Rodrigo Rojas. I mean, Tacuara. None of these guys are even close to the national team at the moment. So it's a much changed team. And of course, Colombia are very different. That was under Carlos Queiroz. This is, they've switched coaches since then. So, I mean, I think this game is very much conditioned by the result in the first match against Ecuador. You get the draw in Quito. Maybe you have a bit of confidence to go for this one. I think what we'll see from Berizzo is he doesn't want to make some of the mistakes he's made in the home games. For example, against Peru, when we conceded twice. Against Bolivia as well, we conceded twice, by kind of maybe trying to play almost a different style to what we played in our away matches. I think what he learned in the Copa America is to try and keep us more compact against either opposition. And then we saw that, in the first game against Bolivia of the Copa America, then you can kick on towards the end of the game, but not go out all guns blazing and possibly concede early. It will be an interesting match. I think Colombia are they're kind of an anomaly. What's the word? Not an anomaly. They are very enigmatic at the moment. You don't know if they're going to come and blow you away kind of 4-0, or they're not going to turn up and have a good game. I think some of those inconsistency we've seen recently. So let's hope we catch them on the right day.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to point out, I'm looking at some of the games, and in total, it looks like there has been 19 Colombia wins, 7 draws, and 18 Paraguay wins. So it's right there head to head.
Not to mention, it's always been tight matches. If you look at it historically, you don't see those type of blowouts of a 3-0, of a 4-0 for either side. Typically, at least in recent years, it's always been 2-1, 1-0, those type of matches. So I think I will expect a tight game in this one. I think these are two sides that love to play against each other, loves to obviously try to be as compact and pragmatic when needed. So I think it's going to be a very crucial game. But I think in these type of games, as we had talked about, this would be the 8th game of the qualifiers. It's important to get the result and the points at home. Even getting a point in Quito will be fundamental. I mean, if you look back now, heading into the 18th match day, maybe those games that Paraguay lost at home, or that they lost points, but they were able to gain it away, that can take them from either qualifying for the World Cup or for not qualifying. So it's important to get maximum points, especially at home, especially against an opponent that, okay, the game against Brazil was probably expected because of the team that they had. But, you look back at what happened against Bolivia, you look back at what happened against Peru, games that are winnable on their day. You can't afford those kind of results, but they need to get this win at home. And especially now heading into the next one. And Ralph, I think this is a really, in a way, maybe benefits Paraguay on the long term. It obviously will depend on what happens in the first 2 games, but Paraguay will close it out against Venezuela, as you had known. And then we had spoken with Jordan, obviously talking about Venezuela in our preview episode. It's a Venezuela side that is without Jose Peseiro, obviously having a new manager. Obviously, Venezuela have gotten the upper hand in the last two games against Paraguay in Asuncion, defeating them for the first time for Brazil 2014, and then defeating them on the final match day to eliminate them from Russia. So maybe third time's a charm for Venezuela, who knows? But I think for this one, if there is the game that they have to win, like they cannot afford to lose, maybe they can afford Colombia because of the way that they play, and obviously Ecuador playing away from home. This is the one that, you know, Paraguay do not need to go into the situation, not only with the obligation to win, but now with the extra added pressure that they have to win if things go bad in the first two games against Ecuador and Colombia.
Yeah, that's right. There's two kind of home games you really have to win, and that's against Bolivia and Venezuela. Looking historically at teams when they don't win those games, they rarely qualify. Paraguay's already drawn against Bolivia at home, so we're in trouble. The odds are slightly stacked against us there. If we weren't to pick up the 3 points against Venezuela at home, it would be very dangerous. I think as much as Venezuela have improved over the years, they're once again finding themselves in quite a difficult situation with what we're seeing with the change in manager. They have some players that they're not unable to travel, or that had to sort out their futures, because this is all happening. We're talking today, we're recording on deadline day, so there's players that didn't want to travel because of that. So I think this has to be a game where we go for it, we take all 3 points. The other thing is, it's very interesting that we have this triple header has never happened before, or at least in my knowledge, it hasn't happened in the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers before. Ourselves and Peru, I think, we're the only teams that we get 2 home games in a row. So Peru get to play their first home games in a row. The first 2 ones, we're playing the last 2 ones. And that kind of having two games in a row at home obviously means your travel doesn't interrupt in the middle. So that gives you a bit of extra time to prepare, and also should be an advantage. So everything points in Paraguay's favor for this game, but with one caveat: everything was in our favor to qualify for 2018. The last game was at home against Venezuela. We just needed to win. Venezuela were out. They pretty much sent a youth team or a B team because of injuries, and also because they had nothing to play for, and we lost that game. So we should certainly not count our chickens, but I do think this is the game that Paraguay would have to take 3 points from, and if they don't, regardless of the other 2 games, they're going to be in big trouble come the end of the qualifiers, because that will really count against you, especially when you think that they didn't beat Bolivia at home.
Yeah, that was such a bitter moment back in before the 2018 World Cup. I remember watching it, and it was a heartbreak. It really was. So every time now that we play Venezuela, that immediately comes to my head, and my mind is in like revenge mode, and I think that's the same way that these Albiroja players are probably thinking about. Let's get them back and get a win every time that we can against them, because it hurt. It was our only chance to get in there, and I feel like nothing against the Venezuelans, but I feel like they did it on purpose. Yeah, I think it's one of those games that we have a lot of advantage of. Venezuela has a brand new, an interim manager, so they also don't have a lot of key players coming in, and we don't either, but at least we can take advantage of that and see where we can adjust and figure them out as well. But Venezuela, I think last time that we played them, we did win. So it was one of those games that they play really well, and I was very happy with the way that they played, and I think that they could repeat this situation.
Yeah, I'm still traumatized, by the way, by that Venezuela. You telling that story, Maria, reminds me. I just moved to Miami because this was 2017. It's about 4 years ago from now. And I was walking back, despondent. We were out, and of course my neighbors were Peruvian, so my neighbors were having this huge party because Peru had just qualified for the World Cup, which is what you get here in Miami, that kind of melting pot. But yeah, I'm definitely traumatized by that defeat to Venezuela.
Not to mention, it was also on the same night the United States also got eliminated against Trinidad and Tobago. So clearly not a day to remember for anyone that is Paraguayan or American, that's for sure. But yeah, I think this is the game where people need to understand. Now, listen, come on. You got to win this one. And as great as Venezuela are, they are a great team. They have fantastic players, but you need to, as I mentioned before, you need to get those points at home, especially now with other teams that are playing. I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, but we don't want to be in a situation where we win and now we have to depend on other teams to get certain results and goals. You get the calculators out, that kind of thing. It's like, we don't want to be in that situation. I think we want to be in a spot where we feel a bit more comfortable. Obviously, nothing is decided from these games, but we could go into next Thursday in a situation where Paraguay are in a more better spot or a worse spot from going into the World Cup. So it's these are the games that matter. And obviously with everything now bunching up into pieces because of COVID, having to delay all these games, it's like you don't know how in fit that these players will be in. So it's almost as if you need that obligation to get the results necessary, be it at home or away, to help you feel a bit more content to qualify for the World Cup, because there's still time. There's still a lot of time. I mean, if they do lose against Ecuador, then it's not the end of the world, but it makes things harder where you think now you have to really up the ante for the game against Colombia and Venezuela.
How many points do you think we need to take from this to have a chance? I mean, I kind of feel we need at least 6 points. So, okay, lose one of the home games, but you would have had to win in Quito.
Yeah, and obviously I think that's a good segue to close it off here with our predictions. I think that's what we assess. We'll obviously give our predictions onto this game. Let's go first to the game against Ecuador in Quito. Obviously, Paraguay have never beaten Ecuador in Quito before, and I don't think that's going to change any bit. I don't think that this Paraguay side have enough to get a result in altitude, especially given the fact that they have to travel the day before. So we have to see what kind of team that is out there. Obviously, no predicted lineup has been made up yet, but you can probably get an idea of who to expect. I think if they're able to get a result over there, I think this Ecuador side is a team that can indeed be beaten, not beaten in a way, but also that you can get some goals and you can get a result. I think if Paraguay can play very tight, which they are accustomed to, they can do that. There have been rumors of them playing with a back five possibly. So I think they're going to have to do that in a result like this. So from my take, I think Paraguay get a 1-1 draw in Ecuador on this one. Ralph, what do you think?
So Ecuador haven't drawn a game yet, which is quite interesting. They've won 3, lost 3. Paraguay is a team that has drawn the most games because they've drawn 4 of their 6 qualifiers. And I'm siding towards that with you as well, Roberto, that I think they can do the business. I think they can get the point. This Ecuador team is very good. I don't think Paraguay are good enough to beat them. But I can see the way they've played kind of without the ball in a lot of these games. They've been very difficult to break down. And attacking wise, maybe Ecuador is not as strong as a Uruguay and Argentina that we managed to hold to draws. So I'm going to go along with the 1-1 as well.
Maria?
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys. A draw seems like a safe play, and I think that they understand this as well. It's hard to get a win from Ecuador, and a draw would be the safest thing for them. I do think that they'll probably go 0-0 this time, though. It'll be good for points against them, I guess.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned altitude, because our next opponent will also be coming off this game playing in altitude. Colombia will actually be playing against Bolivia on the same day, heading into our second game in Asuncion. As I mentioned beforehand, these teams love to play against each other, very tight. Obviously, Colombia have gotten their number over the last few World Cup qualifiers and historically as well. So we're expecting a tight one in this one. And I think we're going to see a tight result in this one. I think the confidence of them getting that result over there in Quito allows them to feel even more confident now with the return of Gustavo Gomez. Possibly we're going to see what kind of players show up that could be warranted a spot for the game against Colombia. And I think, this Colombia side, it's talented on its own. I think it's a fantastic side. I saw what I saw in the Copa America, and even on the Rela, they aren't a side that blew everyone away. I think they are a side that can be exposed when given. You saw that against Brazil. You saw that against Argentina, even Peru giving them a battle, Venezuela as well. So I think we'll see something similar in this one. I think it's weird to see maybe two inconsistent sides fighting it out, but I think that's ultimately how it will be. But I think Paraguay should go into this game with some sort of confidence, and I think it's going to be a tight one. I'm going to say a 1-0 on this one in Asuncion. Maria, what do you think?
Yeah, it could be a low scoring game. It could also be a high scoring game. Maybe they'll go for a win, but maybe a 2-1 win is what I predict. I think it's doable for Paraguay. Colombia, like you said, they like to play against each other. They're not enemies, they're not they have a fine history with each other. So I think a good win with good scoring goals will be good.
Ralph?
I was looking at this, in Colombia, the team that there's been the most goals in their games. So they haven't scored the most, they haven't conceded the most, but putting together how many goals they score and how many they conceded is 24, which is more than Bolivia. Bolivia, there's been 23 goals in their games. So I actually don't know if it'll be a 1-0. I can see it being tight, but I could actually see kind of goals either side. And it helps that they have the second worst defense behind Peru and Bolivia, because Paraguay, maybe our weakness has been scoring. So I think I can see us winning, but both teams will score. So I think it'll be 2-1 to Paraguay.
Heading into this final one against Venezuela, also recent history has given Venezuela its kind of results, but Venezuela do have some tight games ahead of them. They do have to host Argentina in Caracas, the reigning Copa America champions. Then they will have to travel to Lima to take on Peru, obviously a good Peru side on its day, who always make it difficult to play over there in Lima before traveling to Asuncion on this one. And it could indeed factor Paraguay in this one. I think this is the game, as I mentioned, where they have to get the result. It doesn't matter how they do it, but they need to get the 3 points, not just because it's the opponent they're playing, but also playing at home. So I think this is where you're going to see more of a goal-scoring Paraguay side. We don't know what to expect from Venezuela under their new manager. We'll see what they do in the first two games, but I think this is the one where Paraguay need to put their foot down and stamp their authority. And I'm going to say a 2-0 result for Paraguay in this one, that they get the result and that they come off these qualifiers with 7 points to their name, which in fairness would be good. That puts them in 14 points. Obviously, it will be dependent on the other results from the other teams that are participating in the qualifiers, but that does paint a sort of good picture for them halfway through the qualifiers. Ralph, what do you think about this game against the Vino Tinto?
Yeah, I mean a similar feeling there. I think Paraguay, with this being the end of the qualifiers, the second, or the end of this triple header, the second home game, whereas Venezuela will have had to have a very tough game against an Argentina that's really going for that one, by the way, because a lot of their players from England are traveling for the first two matches only. So I think, they'll really target those first two games where they have a stronger team. So, difficult for Venezuela. Then they go to Peru. There's maybe a bit resurgent from the Copa America. So I'm thinking Venezuela arrive in Asuncion, maybe, suffering a little bit from those two games. And I think Paraguay can see them off with also a 2-0 or 3-0. I'll go 3-0. Go for a big win for Paraguay.
Maria?
Yeah, I'm gonna go for a win as well. A good 7 points for Maria Rojas. And I'll agree with Roberto. I think 2-0 seems like a pretty fair result for Paraguay against Venezuela. It's doable, and it's I think they've done it before, if I'm not mistaken. So I think 2-0 would be a good one for Maria Rojas.
Well, that would be certainly positive results for all Paraguayans out there that hopefully can feel a bit more optimistic on the side but it will be 3 important games that we will definitely be excited about. As you had mentioned, you can listen to our previews of the 3 shows that we did for Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela alongside this one on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as we close out this new episode of the World Cup qualifiers, previewing the games in September. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening to this new episode of Guarani Vision. See you soon.